Good evening, everyone. As I'm looking at myself in this in my picture during this video, I'm thinking, well, maybe one time I'll actually do the video at a normal time, put a coat and tie on, and be appropriate for this very important venture that I do at the end of each week. Anyway, um, uh, welcome back to my weekly summary comments on what we've done and some of my thoughts about where we've been and where we might go. Again, wonderfully interesting conversation about creation in the guide, all different aspects of it. And again, as I've seen in the past, you've really come up with many of the kinds of things that scholars and readers of the guide have been coming up with over the years. The questions that you're asking are the real questions. One of the things that you'll need to be a little more sensitive to as you do this reading is that sense of the esoteric and the exoteric. When we can think that he's really writing for the masses, when he's writing for the elite. Sometimes it has to do with his language, particularly in chapter 25. I've talked with a few of the Chevrutot over the week about some of the language that he uses there that seems to be oriented more towards the masses than perhaps towards the philosophers, and he sort of shifts back and forth with that. So just some comments on the readings. Much of your time was spent either on chapter 13 or chapter 25, both crucial chapters in the guide as a whole. Might be interesting to pause to consider why Rambam uses the device of listing three opinions to begin this discussion. He hasn't done this up till now, and he has barely mentioned other philosophers except to refer to the 25 premises that begin the second part of the guide. He talks about that as Aristotle and the Peripatetics. So why would he go there with this? And I have some suspicions, but it'd be interesting to hear from you as we go through this why you think he does it. Perhaps it is to give a voice to these opinions, even though he seems to discard them. That would go a little bit with Strauss's view in Persecution and the Art of Writing. We are asked to take them seriously and to develop arguments against them, that is, the ones that we disagree with. In your discussion, you saw that even though he says that the first opinion was the opinion of our Torah, we could also have the second opinion. And I would say that for Maimonides, the third opinion deserves a lot of respect as well, since it cannot be disproved. With regard to prophecy, our subject for next week, and providence as well, there is in each one of them an opinion of Aristotle that is not easy to dismiss, nor is it so easy to distinguish from that of Maimonides or the Torah. Keep in mind that Rambam is writing this for the perplexed individual who wants to take the words of the Torah seriously. And remember, this is a lot about biblical interpretation, the words of the Torah. A lot of what he has to say in the guide really goes back to exegesis, really goes back to revelation. What is revelation and how does it work? So it's written for this perplexed person who wants to take the words of the Torah seriously and at the same time take the proofs of philosophy seriously. The only way to do that is by reading the Torah in two different ways. That is, there is a natural conflict between those two. How do you bring those two worlds together? The philosophical world and the pshat meaning of the biblical text. And he says the only way you can do this is by seeing that the words can have two levels of meaning. They have the pshat, what he calls the external meaning of the text, and they have the esoteric meaning, the internal, the hidden, the secret meaning. Sometimes it's called remez, sometimes it's called sod. But these are additional ways that the Bible communicates to those people who have these questions, to those people who are seriously worried about them. By the way, the same is true of Rambam's own writings. He mimics the writing style of the Bible so that there is a meaning for the masses and a meaning for the elite. In his own words, chapter 25 is a great example of this. If you read it carefully, as I indicated at the end of my last post, you will find hints and pointers to a meaning which is not so obvious to the casual reader. The words of the Torah can be interpreted in many ways. Perhaps the point of his first sentence in chapter 25 is that the external meaning of the first sentence of the Bible does not require us to affirm the createdness of the world, since the sentence can be interpreted figuratively. He then argues that since Aristotle has not proved eternity, there is no reason for us to interpret it figuratively, but perhaps in this whole convoluted sentence and argument, which is rather convoluted, perhaps he is giving an indication to the careful reader that we should be open to a figurative, or more correctly, a more nuanced view of this first sentence. God created the world through his will and his wisdom, and that act of creation also created time. I often like to use this term. I didn't do it in my introduction or in the postings, but if you think about chapter 13, one might say, in the first opinion, there was never a time when the world didn't exist. Even according to the first opinion, there was never a time when the world did not exist. And I suspect that's true according to all three opinions, actually. If will and wisdom are identical, and then everything exists both out of necessity and out of God's will. He says a little bit of this in the third opinion. This is very confusing. And the philosophical elite are expected to meet the challenge of understanding this deeply, perhaps contradictory, perhaps problematic in many other ways, this deeply problematic concept. But he's expecting the people who are reading his book to strive. It's a challenge. He wants them to work at this so that they can get to a much higher level of their understanding of God, the world, and all that's in it. As we move to our discussion of prophecy this coming week, we'll be able to see new facets of this approach, and also to bring the same kind of Aristotelian approach to understanding who is a prophet, what is the process by which a prophet achieves prophecy. And I would also conclude by saying when you're getting to Passover and the Seder, you might want to think about Maimonides here, how he thinks about miracles. What does he think about the issue of the crossing of the Red Sea? We read a little about that in the earlier stuff, in the Mishnah Torah and the Shmona Prakim, and the specialness of Moses, which we did read about in the Shmona Prakim, and we're going to read a lot more about it. Well, not a lot, but some more about it in the chapters on prophecy. And as you know, Moshe is barely mentioned at all in the Haggadah. Why would that be? What kinds of rationale do you think you might have for that? We'll talk a little bit about that actually as we deal with prophecy next week, or this coming week. It's already this week. It's into Friday morning right now. So again, I've enjoyed reading your stuff. You have this new assignment that I posted to all of you. If you have any questions or problems, please feel free to be in touch with me. I've enjoyed the Chevrutot. I don't know if you're going to have any problems next week in terms of the meeting time, being the week before Passover. I'm not going to be able probably to do a Friday morning Chevruta. I don't know if Lisa and Sarah will be able either to do that. But so be in touch with me if we can find another time to do it. That would be good. If you have to miss a week, it's not the worst thing in the world. I've really been enjoying those Chevrutot that I've been able to participate in. So have a good week, and I'll look forward to reading your materials. Bye-bye.